Welcome back, coin hunters. Money today, we're taking a closer look at 3 Washington quarter-dollar coins from the United States of America that could be much more interesting to collectors than their face value suggests. You might have one sitting in an old collection, coin jar, drawer, or even among your everyday change without realizing it. In this video, we'll examine the key features that can separate an ordinary Washington quarter from a potentially collectible example. We'll talk about dates, mint marks, condition, unusual varieties, errors, and the factors that influence today's collector market. And most importantly, we'll look at current 2026 market values and explain why some exceptional Washington quarters can attract serious money, while common examples may still be worth only their face value. So before you spend your next quarter, check it carefully, because one tiny detail could make all the difference. Let's get started and discover these 3 Washington quarters together. First up, the 1969 Washington quarter with no mint mark. At first glance, this quarter may look like an ordinary old coin, especially if your example is in rough, worn, or heavily circulated condition. But there is an important detail that every collector should understand before deciding what a 1969 quarter is worth. A missing mint mark on a 1969 Washington quarter is normal, not automatically an error. The Philadelphia Mint produced these quarters without a mint mark, and the 1969 Philadelphia issue had a reported mintage of 176,212,000 pieces. That large production number means an ordinary worn example generally does not command hundreds or thousands of dollars simply because it says 1969 and has no mint mark. However, condition, unusual varieties, errors, strike quality, eye appeal, and authentication can dramatically change the story. So if you have one sitting in an old collection, drawer, coin jar, or inherited group of coins, don't judge it only by its age. In this video, we will examine its history, design, composition, minting background, identifying characteristics, condition, possible varieties, and realistic 2026 market values, so you can better understand exactly what you have. To understand the 1969 quarter, we first need to go back several decades. The Washington Quarter series began in 1932, with a design created by sculptor John Flanagan. The coin was introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and eventually became one of the most recognizable denominations in American coinage. The Washington portrait appeared on the obverse, while an eagle and other inscriptions appeared on the reverse. For many years, Washington quarters were struck in a 90% silver composition, but that changed dramatically during the 1960s. Rising silver prices and a shortage of circulating coins pushed the United States Mint toward a new composition. Beginning in 1965, regular circulating Washington quarters were made from copper-nickel-clad material rather than the traditional 90% silver alloy. Therefore, the 1969 quarter is part of an important transitional era in American coin history. It belongs to the modern clad period rather than the classic silver quarter era, which is one reason collectors should not assume that every old Washington quarter contains silver. One of the first things collectors notice about this coin is the absence of a mint mark. On many U.S. coins, a small letter identifies the mint where the coin was produced. For Washington quarters from Philadelphia during this period, however, the absence of a mint mark is exactly what we expect. PCGS explains that Philadelphia struck Washington quarters carried no mint mark through 1979, with the Philadelphia P beginning on circulating coins in 1980. This means that when you examine a genuine 1969 Washington quarter and do not see a tiny D or S near Washington's portrait, that does not automatically indicate a rare missing mint mark error. Instead, it is consistent with the Philadelphia issue. This is an extremely important point for viewers, because online coin videos sometimes make a normal missing mint mark sound like an extraordinary minting mistake. For the 1969 Philadelphia quarter, the lack of a mint mark is part of the normal production characteristics. The real question is whether the individual coin has something else that separates it from the millions of ordinary examples. The reported Philadelphia mintage for the 1969 Washington quarter is 176,212,000 coins, a substantial production figure. When a coin was produced in such large numbers, the date alone usually does not make a circulated specimen extremely rare. Millions of these quarters entered commerce, where they were used in stores, vending machines, parking meters, cash registers, and everyday transactions. Over the decades, countless examples became scratched, stained, worn, or otherwise damaged. Some disappeared from circulation while others remained in collections. PCGS also describes most post-1964 Washington quarters as generally common, although exceptional high-grade examples and special issues can be much more interesting to collectors. So if your 1969 quarter is in rough condition, with noticeable wear across Washington's hair, cheek, lettering, eagle and other design elements, it is important to keep expectations realistic. Its age makes it interesting, but age alone does not transform a common circulated coin into a high-dollar rarity. Now let's examine the front, or obverse, of the 1969 Washington quarter. The central feature is the portrait of George Washington facing left. Around the portrait are the inscriptions Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1969. On a circulated coin, the highest points of Washington's hair, cheek, jaw and other raised areas can show significant wear. This wear can help determine the approximate grade of the coin. A rough example may have flattened details, scratches, discoloration and surface marks caused by decades of circulation. Collectors pay close attention to whether the lettering remains sharp and whether the date is fully readable. A coin that still has strong detail despite circulation may be more desirable than one with severe damage. The position where a mint mark would be expected is also important. On 1969 Washington quarters, the mint mark location is on the obverse, near the lower right area of Washington's portrait. A Philadelphia coin will have no letter there. Again, that blank space is normal for this issue and should not be confused with an automatic minting error. Turn the coin over and you will see the reverse of the Washington quarter. The reverse features a large American eagle with its wings spread, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America, EPLUIBUSUNUM, and quarter dollar. On a heavily circulated example, the eagle's feathers may become soft and difficult to distinguish, while the lettering can develop flat spots and scratches. Collectors look carefully at the reverse because unusual doubling, die characteristics, struck-through areas, off-center strikes, clips, or other genuine minting abnormalities can potentially make an otherwise ordinary coin more interesting. However, damage that occurs after the coin leaves the mint is not the same thing as a mint error. Scratches, dents, corrosion, stains, gouges, cleaning marks, and flattened areas caused by circulation generally do not create major collector premiums. This distinction is crucial when evaluating a rough 1969 quarter. A coin can look unusual without actually being rare, and a genuine mint error requires careful examination, and for valuable pieces, professional authentication. Another important characteristic is the physical construction of the coin. The 1969 Washington quarter is a copper-nickel-clad copper coin rather than a traditional silver Washington quarter. Standard specifications include a diameter of approximately 24.3 millimeters and a weight of approximately 5.67 grams with a reeded edge. Understanding these specifications can help collectors identify suspicious pieces. If you find a 1969 quarter that looks dramatically different, weighs substantially outside the expected range, or appears to have an unusual edge or metal composition, further investigation may be worthwhile. But keep in mind that ordinary wear, dirt, corrosion, or environmental damage can change the appearance of a coin without changing its actual composition. A scale accurate to a small fraction of a gram, good lighting, and magnification can be useful for preliminary examination. For a potentially valuable coin, however, professional testing is much safer than relying on a home experiment. Now let's talk specifically about the condition mentioned in today's video. A rough condition 1969 Washington quarter with no mint mark. If the coin is heavily circulated and has significant wear, its value is generally close to ordinary circulated levels rather than automatically reaching hundreds or thousands of dollars. Current reference information for 1969 Washington quarters shows that the value can vary substantially depending on grade and market source, but common circulated examples are generally modestly valued. One important market reference lists the 1969 Philadelphia issue as a common coin and gives an estimated value of $12 or more in uncirculated mint state condition, while circulated examples are not presented as high-dollar rarities. This is why collectors should separate the words old, rare, and valuable. A coin can be old without being rare, rare without being extremely valuable, or valuable because of an unusual combination of rarity and condition. For a rough 1969 no-mint mark quarter, the strongest possibilities for a significant premium would generally involve an authenticated error, an unusual variety, or an exceptionally important condition-related characteristic rather than the date and lack of mint mark alone. Condition is one of the most important factors in coin collecting. Professional graders use numerical grades to describe a coin's preservation, ranging from heavily worn circulated grades to high mint state grades. A rough 1969 quarter might fall somewhere in the circulated range, depending on exactly how much detail remains and how much damage is present. A much better preserved coin can be worth more because collectors compete for pieces with strong strikes, attractive surfaces, and minimal marks. High-grade examples can become dramatically more expensive than ordinary circulated coins. For comparison, market data for 1969 Washington quarters show that extremely high grades can reach into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Although these values apply to exceptional coins and should never be used to suggest that every 1969 quarter is worth that amount. This is a key lesson for viewers. When you see a headline claiming a 1969 quarter is worth thousands of dollars, always ask what grade was that particular coin, was it certified, was it an error, and what was the actual transaction. Without those details, a headline can create unrealistic expectations. The biggest difference between an ordinary circulated coin and a premium collectible is often preservation. A quarter that spent decades in circulation could have thousands of tiny contact marks, scratches, stains, and areas of wear. A coin preserved in exceptional condition can retain much sharper design detail and stronger original surfaces. Collectors assembling registry sets or high-grade collections may be willing to pay substantially more for coins that achieve elite grades. Market data for the 1969 Washington quarter indicate that very high mint state grades can reach into the thousands of dollars in some market references. But this should not be misunderstood. These high values belong to particular high-grade examples, not to every 1969 no-mint mark quarter. A rough coin should never be valued by comparing it directly with an extraordinary MS67 or MS68 example. The difference in grade can represent an enormous difference in market demand. This is exactly why professional grading can matter when a coin appears unusually well preserved. So, could a 1969 Washington quarter without a mint mark ever be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars? Yes, but not simply because it is a 1969 no-mint mark quarter. High-grade certified examples can bring significant premiums, and genuine mint errors or unusual varieties may also attract collector interest. One current market reference for the 1969 issue shows values climbing dramatically at very high grades, with exceptional examples listed in the thousands of dollars range. Another important reference, the gray sheet, shows that the 1969 Washington quarter entries can range from ordinary values around face value territory to more than $2,000 for certain exceptional examples, depending on the specific issue and condition. Therefore, when a video says this coin could be worth thousands, the responsible way to interpret that statement is that a specific exceptional specimen may have that potential. It does not mean a random worn coin pulled from circulation is automatically worth thousands. If you have a 1969 quarter and want to search for something genuinely unusual, don't stop after checking the date and mint mark. Examine the coin under magnification and look for characteristics that appear to have originated during the minting process. Possible areas of interest can include dramatic double design elements, off-center strikes, clips, unusual planchet problems, struck-through errors, or other abnormalities. However, collectors need to be careful because many apparent errors are actually post-mint damage. A scratch through the date, a dent near the edge, a flattened letter, or discoloration caused by chemicals does not automatically make a coin rare. Authentic mint errors are evaluated by specialists based on how the coin was struck and how the abnormality relates to the manufacturing process. If you believe your 1969 quarter has an unusual error and it appears potentially valuable, avoid cleaning or altering it, and consider submitting it to a reputable professional grading service for examination. If your 1969 no-mint mark quarter is rough, don't immediately throw it away, but don't assume it is a hidden fortune either. Start by documenting the coin exactly as you found it. Look at both sides under good lighting. Check the date, the mint mark area, the lettering, the eagle, the rim, and the edge. Weigh it if you have an accurate digital scale and compare the measurements with the standard specifications. Most importantly, do not clean the coin. Cleaning can leave scratches or unnatural surfaces that reduce collector appeal. Instead, keep the coin in a safe holder or flip that does not contain damaging materials. If you discover something genuinely unusual, take clear photographs and seek an opinion from a qualified numismatist or established grading service. The goal is not simply to find a big number online. The goal is to determine what the coin actually is and whether the market recognizes its special characteristics. As we look at the 2026 market, the most important message is realism. A normal circulated 1969 Philadelphia Washington quarter with no mint mark is not automatically a hundreds or thousands of dollars coin. The no mint mark characteristic is normal for Philadelphia production during this period, and the issue had a large mintage of 176,212,000 pieces. At the same time, exceptional condition can create substantial premiums. Current market references demonstrate that high-grade 1969 quarters can move from modest values into the hundreds or thousands when the grade becomes extraordinary. So if your coin is rough, a realistic expectation is usually a modest collector value rather than an automatic four-figure payday. If the coin is unusually sharp, has an authenticated error, or possesses another recognized rarity, then the situation can be completely different. That is why serious collectors focus on evidence, grade, rarity, and actual market transactions rather than simply relying on dramatic claims. And there you have it, the story of the 1969 Washington quarter with no mint mark, an interesting coin from an important period in United States coinage. Its no mint mark status is consistent with Philadelphia production, and the issue was struck in large numbers, meaning that an ordinary rough example should not automatically be advertised as a rare coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Nevertheless, this quarter remains worth examining because condition, unusual varieties, genuine mint errors, and exceptional certified grades can change its collector appeal dramatically. Current market references show that ordinary examples and elite condition examples can have very different values. Value disclaimer: coin prices change with grade, certification, surface condition, varieties, errors, appeal, authenticity, buyer demand, and actual auction results. The values discussed in this video are reference market information and are not a guarantee that any particular 1969 Washington quarter will sell for a specific amount. A rough circulated coin should not be assumed to be worth thousands of dollars simply because it is old or lacks a mint mark. Always compare your coin with reliable price guides, and when appropriate, obtain professional authentication before making a buying or selling decision. If you have a 1969 quarter in your collection, examine it carefully. You may not have a fortune, but you may have an interesting piece of American coinage history that deserves a closer look. Next up, the 1977 Washington quarter was produced during an important period in American coinage history, when the United States was using copper-nickel-clad composition for circulating quarters rather than the traditional silver composition used before 1965. Millions of these quarters entered everyday commerce, but today, collectors are particularly interested in examples that survived in exceptional uncirculated condition. The important point is that a normal circulated 1977 quarter is generally common, while an exceptionally preserved example can command dramatically higher prices. According to PCGS, the 1977 no mint mark issue was struck at Philadelphia with a reported mintage of 468,556,000 pieces, making the date itself very common. However, the real collecting challenge is finding one with the quality necessary to reach the highest mint state grades. To understand why the 1977 quarter is interesting, we first need to go back to the history of the Washington quarter itself. The Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. John Flanagan created the famous Washington portrait used on the obverse, while the reverse originally featured an eagle design. By 1977, the Washington quarter had already been in American commerce for more than 4 decades and had become one of the most familiar denominations in the country. The quarter was an essential part of everyday transactions, used for everything from vending machines and parking meters to stores and public transportation. Because these coins circulated so heavily, finding an older quarter with almost no evidence of use can be much more interesting to collectors than finding a heavily worn example. The 1977 issue, therefore, represents an important snapshot of American economic and minting history during the late 1970s. One of the first things collectors should understand about the 1977 Washington quarter is its composition. Unlike Washington quarters dated 1964 and earlier, the 1977 quarter was not made of silver. It belongs to the copper-nickel-clad era that began in 1965. PCGS identifies the coin as having a composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. The standard diameter is approximately 24.3 millimeters, and the weight is about 5.67 grams with a reeded edge. These physical characteristics are useful when examining a coin because weight, diameter, appearance, and edge construction can help collectors identify unusual pieces and potentially detect damaged or altered coins. A genuine 1977 quarter should have the familiar copper-nickel appearance, although the exposed edge can reveal the copper core between the outer clad layers. Now let's talk about the most noticeable feature in the coin described in this video, the absence of a mint mark. On a 1977 Washington quarter, no mint mark normally indicates the Philadelphia Mint. This is important because some newer collectors assume that every American coin must have a letter identifying its mint, but that was not the case for Philadelphia coins during this period. PCGS notes that Philadelphia struck coins without a mint mark through 1979, with the Philadelphia Mint beginning to use the P mint mark on circulating coins in 1980. Therefore, seeing no mint mark on a 1977 Washington quarter is not automatically an error or an indication that the coin is extremely rare. Instead, it is the normal characteristic of the Philadelphia issue. There is, however, an interesting twist involving the 1977 no mint mark quarter. During the late 1970s, the West Point Mint produced additional Washington quarters for circulation to help supplement Philadelphia production. PCGS explains that the official Philadelphia mintage figures for 1977 include production associated with this supplemental activity, and historical research attributes approximately 7,352,000 1977 Washington quarters to West Point, even though they carried no W mint mark. That means collectors cannot simply look at a 1977 no mint mark quarter and determine with certainty whether a particular example was struck in Philadelphia or West Point. This unusual production history adds another layer of interest to the date. Nevertheless, the market generally treats these as the 1977 no mint mark issue rather than as separately identifiable Philadelphia and West Point varieties. The next major topic is condition, because condition is where the potential value of a 1977 quarter changes dramatically. If you find a 1977 no mint mark quarter that has circulated for years, it may show scratches, contact marks, dull surfaces, flattened details, and wear on the highest points of Washington's portrait and the reverse design. Such a coin generally has little premium above face value, but an uncirculated coin is different. An uncirculated coin has not experienced normal circulation wear, allowing the original design details and mint luster to remain visible. Collectors then look for the difference between an ordinary mint state coin and a truly exceptional gem or superb gem example. Tiny marks that would be insignificant on a circulated coin can make a major difference when professional graders evaluate an uncirculated specimen. When examining the obverse, start with George Washington's portrait. Look closely around Washington's cheek, jaw, hair, neck, and the open fields surrounding the portrait. These areas can reveal contact marks or abrasions caused when coins collided with one another during production, transportation, and storage. On a high-grade coin, collectors want clean surfaces with strong original luster and minimal distracting marks. Next, inspect the inscriptions, including Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1977. The lettering should have strong definition, and the date should be clearly readable. A coin can have attractive overall appearance but still receive a lower grade because of marks in important focal areas. This is why a casual visual inspection is not enough to determine the exact value of a high-grade 1977 quarter. The reverse deserves just as much attention. The 1977 Washington quarter features the familiar eagle design surrounded by inscriptions including United States of America, EPLURBUSUNUM, quarter dollar, and the denomination information. Examine the eagle's feathers, especially the central areas where weakness, contact marks, or surface abrasions may appear. Also inspect the fields around the eagle because large open areas can make scratches and marks particularly noticeable. The rims and reeded edge should also be checked carefully. Collectors searching for a premium example want a coin with strong overall preservation, attractive surfaces, and no obvious damage. In very high grades, even seemingly minor imperfections can determine whether a coin receives an MS65, MS66, or MS67 designation. This brings us to one of the biggest misconceptions about this coin: the idea that every 1977 no mint mark quarter in uncirculated condition is automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. That is not accurate. The date is common, with more than 468 million examples reported for the Philadelphia issue, and PCGS classifies the issue as common in most grades. The real scarcity appears at the upper end of the grading scale. PCGS specifically notes that examples become scarce around MS66 and higher, while MS67 examples are very difficult to obtain. In other words, the phrase uncirculated covers a very broad range of quality. A coin that simply looks uncirculated to the naked eye is not necessarily a rare MS67 coin. Professional grading, surface quality, luster, strike, and eye appeal all matter. So what could a 1977 no-mint mark Washington quarter be worth today? Current PCGS price guide figures show a wide range depending on grade. The listed values for the 1977 issue are approximately $1 at lower mint state levels, around $2 for MS63, approximately $5 to $6 at MS64, roughly $10 to $14 at MS65, around $30 to $55 at MS66, about $160 to $1,400 at MS67 depending on the specific guide value presentation, and as high as $10,000 shown for MS68 in the current PCGS price guide. These numbers should not be interpreted as a guarantee that an uncertified coin sitting in a collection is worth thousands of dollars. They demonstrate how dramatically the market can change when a common coin reaches an extraordinary grade. There is also a documented auction result that demonstrates why the highest grade examples attract attention. PCGS CoinFacts lists an auction record of $2,550 for a 1977 Washington quarter graded MS67 Plus, sold on April 10, 2021. That result is important because it shows that exceptional certified examples can sell for far more than ordinary examples. At the same time, collectors should remember that one auction result does not establish a guaranteed current selling price for every coin. The buyer, venue, timing, certification, eye appeal, and market conditions can all influence the final result. A raw coin that merely appears bright and uncirculated should never automatically be advertised as being worth thousands of dollars simply because a much higher grade certified example achieved a strong auction result. Another fascinating aspect of this coin is the concept of population and survival. PCGS estimates that a large number of 1977 quarters survive, but the number becomes dramatically smaller when the search is restricted to very high grades. PCGS currently estimates roughly 163.99 million examples surviving in all grades, about 4.92 million at MS60 or better, and approximately 983,967 at MS65 or better. These estimates illustrate an important lesson in coin collecting. Rarity does not always mean rarity of the date. Sometimes a coin is common overall but rare in exceptional condition. That is exactly the situation that makes the 1977 quarter interesting. There may be millions of survivors, but collectors searching for a virtually flawless, top-grade example face a much more difficult challenge. If you believe you have an unusually beautiful 1977 no-mint mark quarter, the next step is careful examination rather than immediately spending money on grading. Hold the coin under good lighting and rotate it slowly to see how the luster moves across the surfaces. Look for scratches, hairlines, spots, discoloration, fingerprints, cleaning, and other forms of damage. Never clean the coin with household chemicals, polishing compounds, abrasive cloths, or other materials. Cleaning can permanently damage the surfaces and may make the coin less desirable to collectors. If the coin appears exceptionally sharp and nearly flawless, compare it with professionally graded examples and consider whether professional authentication and grading make economic sense. For a common lower-grade example, grading fees can easily outweigh the coin's value, while a genuinely outstanding specimen may justify closer consideration. There are also varieties and errors that collectors should keep in mind when examining a 1977 quarter. A normal missing mint mark is not itself an error because Philadelphia coins of this era were intentionally produced without a mint mark. However, genuine mint errors can be valuable when they are dramatic, authentic, and recognized by the collecting community. Examples of potentially interesting errors might include significant off-center strikes, major die breaks, broad strikes, clips, or other unusual mint-made characteristics. The key word is genuine. Damage occurring after the coin left the mint can sometimes look unusual, but generally does not carry the same numismatic premium. Collectors should therefore be cautious about internet claims that label every strange-looking 1977 quarter as a rare error worth thousands. The historical setting of 1977 also makes this quarter worth remembering. The United States was experiencing economic challenges inflation, and changing consumer habits during the late 1970s. The US Mint had to maintain enormous production levels to keep coins flowing through the economy. PCGS notes that strong production demands during this period contributed to West Point supplementing Washington quarter production. The quarter was not created as a special collector item. It was a working piece of American currency designed to move from person to person. Decades later, however, collectors began separating the ordinary survivors from the exceptional ones. This transformation from everyday money to collectible object is one of the reasons coin collecting is so fascinating. And now, if you have a 1977 Washington quarter with no mint mark, what should you do? First, do not assume it is rare simply because it is old or because it has no mint mark. Remember that the absence of a mint mark is normal for Philadelphia quarters from this period. Instead, concentrate on condition. Is the coin genuinely uncirculated? Does it still have strong original mint luster? Are Washington's cheek and hair free from distracting marks? Are the fields clean? Is the reverse sharply struck? Does the coin show any evidence of cleaning or damage? If the answer to all of these questions appears positive, then you may have an example worth researching further. The most valuable 1977 quarters are generally those that combine exceptional preservation with a very high professional grade. Finally, the biggest lesson from the 1977 Washington quarter is that value is determined by much more than the year printed on the coin. The 1977 no mint mark quarter is a common issue overall, but its highest quality survivors can become significantly more desirable. Current published price guide information demonstrates values ranging from around face value level amounts for lower mint state grades to hundreds or even thousands of dollars for exceptional certified specimens, with PCGS current guide displaying a $10,000 figure at MS68. A documented MS67 plus auction record of $2,550 also shows that top-quality examples can attract substantial attention. But remember, these are market guide and auction examples, not promises. Before buying or selling, verify the coin's exact grade, authenticity, certification, variety, and current comparable sales. Value disclaimer. The market values discussed in this video are reference market figures based on published price guide information and documented auction data available at the time of research. A normal circulated 1977 Washington quarter with no mint mark is generally not a rare, high-value coin. Higher values typically apply to exceptionally preserved, professionally graded high mint state examples or genuine mint errors and varieties. Market prices can change with grade, certification, appeal, population, auction demand, and actual selling results. Never assume that every uncirculated 1977 quarter is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Always verify current price guides and recent auction results before making a buying or selling decision. Next up, the 1997 D Washington quarter. This quarter was struck at the Denver Mint and carries the D Mint mark, making it easy to distinguish from the Philadelphia issue of the same year. At first glance, a 1997 D quarter may look like an ordinary 25-cent coin, and in most circulated grades, that is exactly what it is. However, exceptional examples can become much more interesting to collectors, particularly coins with outstanding mint state preservation, strong strike quality, attractive surfaces, and certified high grades. The 1997 D had a very large mintage of 599,680,000 pieces, so the date itself is not considered rare. The real story is therefore not simply, is this a 1997 quarter, but rather, what condition is this particular 1997 D quarter in, and does it possess anything unusual that collectors would pay a premium to own? In today's video, we will explore its history, design, specifications, minting background, condition, varieties, errors, and realistic market values, including why a tiny percentage of extraordinary examples can bring hundreds, or even more than $1,000. To understand the 1997 D quarter, we first need to look at the history of the Washington Quarter series. The Washington Quarter was introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. John Flanagan created the design that became one of the most recognizable images on American coinage. The obverse features a portrait of George Washington facing left, while the traditional reverse used on the 1997 D displays an American eagle with its wings spread. By 1997, this design had already been used for decades and had become a familiar part of everyday American commerce. The quarter had also undergone important changes over the years. Beginning in 1965, the United States Mint moved away from the old 90% silver composition for regular circulation quarters and introduced a copper-nickel clad composition. Therefore, the 1990-70 is not a silver Washington quarter. It is a clad coin consisting of outer layers of copper-nickel bonded to a copper core. NGC lists its composition as copper-nickel clad copper, its weight as approximately 5.67 grams, its diameter as 24.3 millimeters, and its edge as reeded. The D on this coin is extremely important because it identifies the Denver Mint as the facility that produced the quarter. The 1990-70 issue was part of a huge production year for Washington quarters. According to major numismatic references, Denver produced 599,680,000 regular strike quarters dated 1997. That enormous production number immediately tells us that the ordinary 1990-70 quarter should not be described as a rare coin simply because it is nearly 30 years old. Millions were made and many entered circulation. Nevertheless, mintage alone does not determine whether a particular individual coin is collectible. Modern clad coins can become surprisingly difficult to find in very high grades because they were made for commerce rather than long-term preservation. Coins were placed into bags, rolls, vending machines, cash registers, bank inventories, and countless pockets and drawers. Every stage created opportunities for scratches, contact marks, dull surfaces, and other damage. Consequently, while the date is common, a superb example with exceptional preservation can be much more desirable than a heavily worn example. Identifying the coin correctly is the first step before thinking about value. On the obverse, you should see the familiar portrait of George Washington, along with the inscriptions Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1997. The Denver issue carries the small d mint mark on the obverse, near Washington's hair area. On the reverse, you will find the American Eagle design surrounded by inscriptions including United States of America, EPLURBUSUNUM, $quarter, and the denomination-related wording. The coin has a reeded edge, which is another normal characteristic of the series. Because the 1990-70 is a regular circulation issue, collectors should be careful not to confuse ordinary manufacturing characteristics with valuable errors. A weak-looking letter, small mark, discoloration, or minor surface disturbance does not automatically make a coin rare. The strongest candidates for significant premiums are coins with verifiable mint errors, recognized varieties, or exceptional certified grades. This distinction is extremely important because online videos and listings sometimes describe ordinary coins as rare simply because they have an older date. Condition is one of the most important factors in determining the value of a 1990-70 Washington quarter. A heavily circulated example may show flattened details on Washington's portrait, numerous scratches, contact marks, dull surfaces, and wear on the highest points of the design. Such a coin generally has little or no premium over its 25-cent face value. NGC's current guide information indicates that circulated 1990-70 examples are generally valued in the neighborhood of $0.30 to $0.85, depending on grade, while higher mint state examples can be worth considerably more. This means that simply having a 1990-70 quarter does not mean you have a valuable coin. The condition must be evaluated carefully. A coin that looks old, because it has been circulated, is actually less likely to command a substantial premium. Collectors searching for valuable examples usually want coins that look fresh, clean, sharply struck, and minimally damaged. The difference between an ordinary circulated quarter and a high-grade certified example can be dramatic, but that difference comes from scarcity of condition, not from the date alone. The real collecting opportunity for the 1990-70 begins when we move into mint state grades. A mint state coin is one that has not circulated in the traditional sense and retains its original mint-produced characteristics. However, not every uncirculated coin is automatically valuable. An uncirculated quarter can still have many bag marks, scratches, weak details, unattractive surfaces, or other problems. Professional grading services evaluate the coin on a numerical scale, and small improvements in grade can sometimes produce significant differences in market value. NGC's published guide for the 1990-70 lists progressively higher values as the grade increases, reaching substantially higher levels for exceptional coins. PCGS information similarly emphasizes that collectors generally seek mint state examples because circulated pieces have very little premium over face value. For this reason, if you discover a 1990-70 quarter that looks unusually bright and untouched, it may be worth examining under good lighting rather than immediately spending it. One of the biggest challenges with modern clad quarters is surface preservation. Even coins that never circulated can acquire contact marks simply from touching other coins during production, transportation, storage, and handling. On a 1990-70 quarter, examine Washington's cheek, jaw, hair, and open fields for contact marks. Then inspect the reverse, especially the eagle and the surrounding fields. A coin with fewer distracting marks has a better chance of reaching a high grade. Collectors also look for original luster, which is the reflective appearance produced by the interaction of light with the coin's original surface. Cleaning is another major concern. A coin that has been polished, harshly cleaned, scratched, or chemically altered may lose much of its collector appeal even if it looks shiny. This is why you should never assume that the brightest coin is automatically the most valuable. Original, undamaged surfaces are generally far more desirable than artificial brightness created by cleaning. Strike quality is another feature worth examining closely. A coin can technically be uncirculated while still having less than perfect details because of the way the dies and planchet interacted during striking. Collectors seeking top-grade examples often prefer coins with strong design definition and attractive overall appearance. On the 1990-70 quarter, look carefully at Washington's hair details and facial features on the obverse and the eagle's feathers and surrounding lettering on the reverse. Eye appeal also matters. Two coins carrying the same numerical grade can attract different levels of interest depending on their surfaces, luster, color, marks, and overall appearance. This is particularly relevant at the upper end of the grading scale, where tiny differences can separate an ordinary high-grade coin from a truly exceptional example. If your quarter has sharp details, clean fields, strong luster, and very few marks, it deserves closer attention. However, remember that only a professional grading service can establish an official certified grade. Another reason a 1990-70 quarter could become more valuable is the presence of a genuine mint error. Errors are different from normal wear or damage because they occur during the manufacturing process. Examples can include striking problems, clips, off-center strikes, missing clad layers, or other recognized minting abnormalities. Importantly, not every unusual-looking coin is a mint error. A coin can be damaged after leaving the mint, and post-mint damage generally does not carry the same numismatic premium. Historical auction records demonstrate that unusual 1990-70 errors can attract substantially higher prices than normal examples. For instance, CoinWorld's published auction information includes a 1990-70 quarter with a struck-off center triple-clip error graded MS63 that sold for $104, as well as a 1990-70 quarter with a missing obverse clad layer and curved clip graded MS64 that sold for $132. These examples show why collectors should inspect unusual pieces carefully, but they should not be used to claim that every 1990-70 quarter is worth $100 or more. Now let's talk about the most important question. What could a 1990-70 Washington quarter actually be worth today? For an ordinary circulated example, the answer is usually close to face value. NGC currently lists circulated examples around $0.30 to $0.85, depending on grade. At lower mint state levels, values remain relatively modest. CoinWeek reports that low mint state examples around MS60 to MS62 have generally traded around $2 to $5, while AU examples can bring a small premium over face value. As the grade rises, however, the value can increase significantly. CoinWeek reports typical MS66 examples in a range of roughly $5 to $30, with MS67 examples often around $40 to $60, although individual sales can vary. Other market guides show different estimates, demonstrating an important point for collectors. Coin values are not fixed numbers. The exact selling price depends on grade, certification, eye appeal, auction demand, and the circumstances of the sale. At the very top of the grading scale, the 1990-70 becomes much more interesting. PCGS records an auction result of $978 for a PCGS MS68 example sold by Heritage Auctions on January 7, 2004. CoinWeek reports an even higher auction result of $1,708.88, including buyer's fee, achieved by a PCGS MS68 example in a May 2019 Great Collection sale. This is the kind of information that makes the 1990-70 fascinating for collectors, but it is extremely important to understand what these numbers represent. They do not mean that a normal 1990-70 quarter found in an old drawer is worth $1,000. These exceptional prices were associated with coins that achieved extremely high professional grades and competed in the collector market. In other words, the large price comes from extraordinary condition and scarcity at the highest grade levels, not simply from the 1997 date or the D-Mint mark. A major reason top-grade modern quarters can command impressive prices is that maintaining a coin in nearly perfect condition is difficult. A quarter can leave the mint looking beautiful and then immediately encounter other coins that create tiny contact marks. Bags can cause additional abrasions, transportation can produce friction, and handling can damage the fields. Once a coin reaches a grading service, even microscopic imperfections can influence the final grade. PCGS identifies MS68 as the current top census grade for the 1990-70 and notes that the population at this level is extremely small. CoinWeek likewise notes the limited number of certified MS68 pieces and discusses the strong premiums that can occur when exceptionally graded examples appear at auction. This is why collectors sometimes pay hundreds or more than $1,000 for an apparently ordinary modern quarter. They are not paying for the 25-cent denomination. They are paying for a combination of rarity, condition, certification, and collector demand. If you have a 1990-70 quarter at home, start by checking the date and confirming the D-Mint mark. Next, examine both sides under bright, indirect light. Look for excessive scratches, dents, discoloration, cleaning, and signs of circulation. Then pay special attention to the Fields and Washington's portrait. Does the coin have strong original luster? Are the surfaces unusually clean? Are the details sharply defined? Does it appear substantially better than the average quarter you see in circulation? If yes, you may have an example worth comparing with certified coins. Also inspect the edge for anything unusual and look for possible striking errors. If you believe you have a genuine error or an exceptionally high-grade example, avoid cleaning it. Cleaning can permanently reduce collector appeal. Instead, compare it with reputable grading resources and, when appropriate, consider professional authentication and grading. Remember that an online asking price is not proof of value. Actual completed auction sales and professional price guides are much more useful indicators. This is one of the most important lessons for anyone collecting coins in 2026. You may see online advertisements claiming that a 1990-70 Washington quarter is worth hundreds, thousands, or even enormous sums of money. Those claims should never be accepted without evidence. A seller can ask any price they want, but an asking price does not mean someone will actually pay it. Real market evidence comes from documented sales, recognized auction records, and established grading information. PCGS lists the $978 MS68 auction record from Heritage, while CoinWeek documents the later $1,708.88 result including buyer's fee. Meanwhile, ordinary circulated examples remain close to face value according to major price guides. Therefore, the responsible collector should separate exceptional auction records from normal market values. A 1990-70 quarter can indeed reach hundreds or even over $1,000 in an extraordinary certified grade, but that is completely different from saying every old or circulated 1990-70 quarter is valuable. Value disclaimer: so is the 1990-70 Washington quarter worth checking? Absolutely, but check it with realistic expectations. This coin was produced in a huge quantity of nearly 600 million pieces, so the ordinary circulated example is not a rare treasure. The excitement comes from finding something exceptional. A superb mint state coin, an unusually well-preserved example, a recognized mint error, or a coin capable of reaching the highest certified grades. The documented market shows that ordinary pieces may remain near face value, while top-grade examples have reached hundreds, and, in notable cases, more than $1,000 at auction. So before you spend that 1990-70 quarter, take a second look. Check the mint mark, surfaces, strike, luster, condition, and possible errors. And remember this important value disclaimer. Coin values change with grade, certification, surface quality, eye appeal, varieties, errors, market demand, and actual auction results. The values discussed in this video are reference market examples and are not a guarantee that every 1990-70 Washington quarter will sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars. If you discover an extraordinary example, professional authentication and grading can help determine what you really have. Keep searching, keep learning, and never underestimate the possibility that an ordinary-looking coin might have an extraordinary story behind it. Thanks for watching.